This is Steve Wilson and the X-Craft's eJets video tutorial series. In this video, we're finally going to take off. Basically, what I'm going to cover in this video are vertical modes, as well as a quick visit to the progress page in action to show you essentially how it works. Okay, and as always, let's go ahead and get down to business in the cockpit. And I've gone ahead and pre-configured the aircraft for flight and entered the waypoints for the flight plan. So we're all good there. So let's kind of take this slow here initially. First thing I want to do is go ahead and set up the autopilot. Let's take a look at the FGCP. I want to go ahead and activate the flight director. I do not want to activate the autopilot until I'm off the ground. I want to be sure I have my altitude entered. 30,000 feet is not correct. What I want is what I have for my route, which is 15,000 feet. So let's go back and change that to 15,000 feet. Okay. My target airspeed, my cruise airspeed wants to be what? Go to the perf page. What did I enter there? I entered 290 knots. Fair enough. But of course, we are currently below 10,000 feet, so I only want to use 250. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do when I take off is I'm probably going to go ahead and have vertical speed set just to be sure that I have a positive mode setting, just in case I need to swap over to vertical speed as opposed to flight level change, which is my preferred method of climbing to altitude. More on that in a moment or two. Let's go ahead and back this up. 2,000 feet per minute. Good to go. My autopilot is completely set up except for my target heading. And to set that up, oops. Gotta love that DKE beep. Okay, let's go back to the FGCP. Right now my heading bug is at 085, but my runway heading is 126. So let's go ahead and sync that up. I use that. Use the heading selector knob for that. Push to sync, and we're good to go. You see the bug snap to our current heading, and if this wasn't so cluttered, you'd see this as well. In fact, let's go ahead and take care of that. There we go. Now we can see our course track, and of course we can see the magenta, the dashed magenta line that shows our current selected heading. Okay, so this much is good. We're good to go as far as the autopilot is concerned. I am going to be using the FMS for my navigation, so I'll select FMS. And you can see FMS, come on. Oh, over in the autopilot. Sorry, it's right here, FMS. I'm used to looking on the PFD on the pilot side, but right here we have only the first officers to look at, so that's what we've got to use. Okay, anyway. Not going to select AP again because we're on the ground, but I am going to select nav. That basically uses the entered flight plan to guide the aircraft after we do engage the autopilot. Okay, so let me see. I think everything is pretty well set. I did go ahead and set my flaps, my trim. My spoilers are retracted. The brake is still on, as I can see in the annunciator. So let's go ahead and toggle that off. But before I do, I want to show you one quick thing. I started the aircraft with the engines running. And top tip, there we go, up the overhead panel. When you start the aircraft with the engines running, it's going to leave the packs and the bleeds off. We want those on. And we want the selector knob for the bleed air switched to both. Very important. This essentially gives you pressurization after 8,000 feet. Cabin altitude raises to 8,000 feet and pretty much stays the same on up. If you don't set this, you'll get a warning for high cabin altitude, and of course, after a certain point in time, you'll start passing out. Can't have that. Okay, enough babbling. Let's see if we can't get this beast off the ground. Let's head back here, release the parking brake, That's done. We'll press my takeoff button.
Takeoff. Okay.
Hey, we're ready, good to go here. Okay, so let me see, and please pardon my left-handed flying. It has been a while. So we'll advance the throttles, and I see the engines coming up in sync, and the aircraft is rolling. I'm not quite at 100% power just yet. In fact, I'm going to take a quick peek over on Perf TRS. So I'll go ahead and set takeoff 1. Get back up to the aircraft, and now we can go ahead and hit full throttle. All right. And we'll wait for the V-speed callouts.
V1. Rotate.
And rotate
V2.
there. We have a positive rate, gear up. And I'm shooting for an airspeed of 250 knots. Goes over just a bit. Can retract flaps 1 notch. Bring them up some more. And now I can start climbing. I can engage the autopilot. And that changes us to our course. And I'm using FLCH to climb. And now the aircraft will pitch up and slow back down to 250 knots. I got a little bit out of control there. I told you I was rusty. And gears up, flaps are up. And we are climbing. That is essentially the climb mode that I always use. I don't ever use VNAV. I don't normally use vertical speed to climb. And let's go ahead and throttle back a little bit here. And the aircraft will adjust as we climb up to 15,000 feet. Of course, we're going to get up there pretty darn quick. The other vertical modes. A lot of folks are very particular about using VNAV. I don't use VNAV except for descent into my destination. That's basically because I want to be sure and let the autopilot guide me through any procedural constraints that might exist throughout the star, the transition, and of course the approach. Vertical speed is useful if you do not fly VNAV. Essentially, a lot of pilots will calculate their descent angle, and they will make their own top of descent call, and they'll use vertical speed to govern their descent angle, basically using mental math to figure out how fast they should be descending depending upon how fast they go. And what I'd recommend looking up is the rule of threes. This will give you a good idea of how to manage that. Okay, and we've reached our altitude here. We're at 15,000 feet. We can go ahead and accelerate up to our planned airspeed. Let's go ahead and review on the flight plan page what that was. Okay, we want to be at 290 knots. Like I said, rusty. Okay, slow that puppy back down. And we're cycling through our waypoints. And just for grins, because the weather's nice, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set my airspeed, basically my auto throttle. Let's go back to the FMS, make sure that's set properly. Airspeed can now be 290. Go to DKE 290, enter that. Oops. Go back to the FMS, or the FGCP, and we can set auto throttle. 290 is set, and the aircraft will now slow down just a bit. We almost got a little bit too fast there. Anything above 290 is a little bit dodgy. The aircraft likes to fly along a little bit slower than that. Of course, anything over 310, 320 or so, and you risk the autopilot flying up to slow the aircraft down, basically to prevent breakage of the aircraft structure. Okay, so here we are now at altitude, and the FLCH, flight level change, has automatically swapped over to altitude hold. That was the other vertical mode I wanted to go through with this particular video. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change altitude. Say we've been cleared to 16,000 feet. I'll just go ahead and do a vertical speed climb to show you how that works. Let's go ahead and go to the autopilot page again. We'll enter 16,000 feet. Oops. And we'll enter that here. We'll use a vertical speed of 2,500 feet per minute because I'm bored if it takes too longer. And that's good to go. So now we have a vertical speed and an altitude entered. We just need to go ahead and tell the autopilot to go ahead and climb. Oops, I keep doing that. That's why we've got that beep. Okay, now that I've got a higher altitude set, I have got 2,500 feet per minute set in the vertical speed. All I do is engage vertical speed, and the aircraft should fly up to the desired altitude. Just a coincidence, we happen to be passing a waypoint here, but the aircraft can certainly climb when it's turning as well as it can when it's flying straight along its flight path. But now we're going to go ahead and climb up to 16,000 feet. Pretty straightforward. And we're already settling in, it seems like. In fact, the vertical speed has automatically switched down to 0 feet per minute, indicating, hey, we're at the altitude we want to be at. The other method, the only other thing I'm going to do here is show you VNAV, and I'll just go ahead and engage that mode right now. And it's going to descend now because the flight path that we've defined in our flight plan has a 15,000 foot maximum. Let's go over that real quick. Head down to the FMS, go through progress. We'll be back here in just a moment. But here, everything is set for 15,000 feet. So what we're doing is we're using VNAV to guide us to that altitude. If we were climbing or descending, essentially what we would be doing is arriving at 15,000 feet just in time. If the next waypoint altitude happened to be 14,000 feet, once we reached Nachi, we would descend. So far, so good. All right, let's go ahead and visit Perf 3. Essentially, the default VNAV profile is the default feet per minute, and the default feet per minute is calculated between waypoints. If you've got two waypoints of differing altitudes, like I said, the VNAV function will get you to that altitude just in time. On the other hand, you can, and I'm going to go ahead and just make sure we're at altitude here before I start playing with this, because we should be in altitude hold. Actually, no, we would be in VNAV hold, but it's holding our 15,000 foot altitude. Okay, and let's see. We have altitude hold here. That's good. That's good. That's showing that things are working. And once that goes green, we'll be at altitude. And as you can see, we're descending nice and slow and even. And very shortly, this should get over. There we go. We just went green. We're now in altitude hold. And that pretty much takes care of it for vertical modes. But one thing I do want to go ahead and show you while we're in flight here is to show you the progress page. And let's go over there. Progress. Of course, we have two other pages beyond progress. We've already seen the flight plan page. And progress 2, this gives us our waypoints that we can edit. Right now it's automatically on waypoint 1, but say we wanted to enter waypoint 9. Well, that's Pickley, and it gives us all the information here. We can change the airspeed or the altitude that's entered for this waypoint if we need to. And we go back to progress, and essentially what this shows you is it shows you the time of day up top, the current waypoint that we're flying towards, the distance we have to get to that waypoint, and about what time we'll get there. And we expect at this point to have just a little over 8,100 pounds of fuel in the aircraft when we get to Nachi. We also show the next waypoint beyond Nachi and how many miles we have to go there, the ETA and the fuel again. And the third row, of course, we show Tucson International Airport, our destination, We've got 294 and change to go to get there, and we'll get there in just under an hour. And we expect to have 6,900 pounds or so of fuel on board once we get there. And that pretty much takes care of progress. And I think we're pretty much done here. And we just need to keep on flying. And with that, I'll go ahead and sign off here. And we'll go ahead and see you in the next one. Thanks for dropping by. And, of course, have a great day.